Thank you for joining me today on Paint a Beautiful Picture. This is episode number 166, Handling Failure. Every single one of us fail. We don't ever make up our minds to do something and go do it perfectly the very first time with full mastery and great skill. It's just not how it works. Babies learn how to walk. In that process, they learn how to pull themselves up. They walk around a coffee table. They walk up and down the length of the couch. When they finally let go, even one-handed, they fall down and they fall down and they fall down and they fall down. I mean, they fall down hundreds of times, thousands of times, before they finally gain mastery of the skill of walking where they want to go with purpose and without incident. That's a very simple illustration, but an accurate one. A child does not pick up a book when he's 4 or 5 and just start reading. He has to go through the process of letter recognition and sound recognition and the comprehension that the same letter can make multiple sounds. There are just so many parts of the process involved in the skills required to read that it takes time, oftentimes as long as 2 years before a child recognizes the letters and can put them together and read. Even when they can read the words, it might take a while before they put all those words together and come up with reading comprehension. The point is, everything takes part of a process, and along the way, there are many parts where we fail. When we help our child understand that failure is part of the process of life, you are not going to be good at every single thing that you want to do, and you're certainly not going to be great at it the first time or the 10th time or maybe the 100th time, which means that along the way you will have many small failures, and those failures can be distressing, discouraging, disappointing, and frankly, maddening. Occasionally, you need to admit that to your child. And yet, you don't give up. You don't quit. You have to persevere. You keep on going. Anything worth doing is worth doing well, and it's worth putting in the time and the effort and the energy to get good at it. Okay, so you have a child, and they're kind of a perfectionist. They got to do everything perfectly, which isn't even a realistic expectation, but it's who they are. It's part of their personality. It's ingrained in them. And so they're frustrated and they're angry and they're bent out of shape, and they are not patient or gracious with themselves in the learning process, while they're far less than perfect. And they see everything every day that they aren't doing perfectly as a failure. This is a person who needs to learn how to handle failure. When you see someone who is not a super achiever or a perfectionist and they're willing to do it, slapdash, okay, good enough for me, I'm finished, I'm out of here, and they didn't even do part of the job, much less any of the job, very well, and you try to help them see that, and then, oh, I'm just a failure, I'm never going to be good at anything, I don't even know why I'm trying. And so they're already not very willing to work hard at it or try, and they're discouraged even more when they see that the part-way job or the halfway job or the less than halfway job they did wasn't good enough or wasn't enough. There are lots of elements in kids' personalities that are very challenging in dealing with failure, and that's why we as parents need to learn to help our kids handle failure. What do you do when you fail? Okay, kind of depends on how big the failure is, very truthfully. They aren't exactly the same when you fail to take out the trash as it is when you failed to set the brake on the car and it rolled out into the street and an older person ran into it and ended up with a broken neck. Those are not the same level of failures. It certainly isn't the same as failing to tell a person that you were going to be late and you inconvenienced them, or failing to tell a person that you had no intention of showing up at all and you just leave them stranded because you didn't have the courage to admit that you didn't want to do what you committed to do in the first place, and you leave them sit there for 4 or 5 hours. Those are not exactly the same, but they're all failures. First of all, we need to know, and our kids need to understand, we all fail. In other words, I'm not going to beat you up emotionally, yell and scream at you, and have a fit because you fail. But I need you to have the courage to admit it. I failed. I let you down. That wasn't good. I didn't do what I said I would. When I didn't do what I said I was going to do, it had consequences not just for me, but also for you. It affected your life. All of those things are admissions of failure. And we need to be willing to make those admissions as parents, incidentally, because our children are going to model what they see. If we never admit our failures, it's going to be very difficult for them to do it. Then you need to have a level of patience with yourself, especially in gaining a skill. And I don't just mean learning how to multiply or learning how to drive a car. Skills involve how to relate to people. If you think that you're just amazing with every kind of person, either you don't have a very big scope of friends, or you don't really pay attention to other people's social cues, because all of us rub somebody the wrong way somewhere. Some of us rub a lot of people the wrong way almost everywhere we go. We may not see that, and we may not understand why, but those shortcomings in interpersonal relationships are also failures. Our kids need to know you will not always succeed at every person in your room, in your classroom, or in your on your baseball team, or in your choir group. Every person in the room will not love you. You will fail at some of those relationships. But you can develop better skills. You can develop more in-depth understanding of interpersonal reactions and relationships. You might do better at gaining friends or working alongside of other people, but initially that might involve some failure. Every single part of life in the learning game is going to involve failure at some point, and it is what you do with those failures that matter. So what you do is you gain the lesson and you use the information and you do it again and you do it again and you do it however many times it takes until you improve, until you gain mastery, or at least some level of mastery over the skill. Let's put this into real terms. Your child really wants to play baseball really badly. So you get him a bat and a glove and a baseball. You start throwing it around. Can't catch worth a lick. If on the first day after 5 minutes they give up, they're never going to be able to play baseball, because you got to be able to catch the thing. You've got to see it, have a certain level of eye-hand coordination with the ball. Can't be scared of it and back 4 feet away. You got to stand there and lean into it and get a hold of that ball. When it comes to getting up to bat, you take that bat in your hand. You have to learn how to hold it. You got to have a decent enough grip, not overly tight, not too loose, not 6 to 8 inches apart. You have to learn how to get a hold of that bat. You got to learn how to swing that bat somewhat smoothly and with quite a bit of eye-hand coordination and timing. You're not going to get that the very first time. There's going to be a lot of small failures in the gaining of the skills necessary to play baseball. If you really want to play baseball badly enough, you're going to keep going and keep going and keep going. You're going to persevere until you gain the skill. You're going to overcome all of those small failures until you develop small successes and a little bigger successes and great success. That's what it takes. Even major league ball players go up to the plate, and at least half the time, and many of them 75 to 80% of the time, miss the ball when they swing. That's a failure, a small failure. It's really a big failure, though, when you strike out and you got the bases loaded and it's the end of the ninth and you could have won, but you didn't. Yes, life has a lot of failures. You can state, and your child can as well, how they're feeling about it. But no one needs to act really badly. Let me describe this to you. So you have a child, a teenager, parks the car, they think. Sets the emergency brake, they think. but really they left it in neutral and they didn't set the brakes sufficiently. They come in the house. 5 minutes later, you hear this massive crash. The car rolled all the way down the driveway. An older person ran into it. They're severely injured. That's a pretty big failure, truthfully. It's a massive one. Did a lot of financial damage, horrible physical damage to someone, and there are consequences to that. Still, you don't need to yell and scream at the kid. That's not going to do anything for them. They don't need to yell and scream at themselves internally. They need to say, okay, that was a very costly mistake. That was a pretty big failure, and it has horrible consequences. I can't undo it. I can only deal with it. So we have to deal with our failures sometimes. That means we have to go to other people. We have to admit or acknowledge. Sometimes it literally costs us money. And sometimes it costs us a lot emotionally as well. All of us have to handle failure. Teach your child when they are really young to handle failure, and to handle failure, pardon my pun, with pretty good success, and continue to help them along the way to admit that people fail. I fail. I don't like it. Part of the process of learning is to fail, and I'm going to keep going until I have a level of mastery or success in the things that really matter. I hope this has been of some help to you today. I would like you to leave me a thumbs up, a comment, a suggestion, even a question. And my challenge for you today is this: how do I handle failure? Because if you don't handle failure very well, you aren't going to do a great job at teaching your child to handle it. I will look forward to having you again with me very soon on Paint a Beautiful Picture. You may find additional information on our paintabeautifulpicture.com website. Additionally, you may watch me on Rumble, and you may also listen to a podcast on Buzzsprout or Spreaker, all under the name Paint a Beautiful Picture. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. You may subscribe, and if you are interested in receiving notifications, please hit the notifications button.